They called me defective. Not broken. Not struggling. Defective. Like I was some kind of product that came off the assembly line wrong. Something to be returned or thrown away. So one day, I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. I became the dumbest person in the room. And they believed it. Every single second. Until the day they realized they had been completely, catastrophically wrong about me. CTA. Before we dive in, if you enjoy real, emotional, slow-burn revenge stories, the kind that hit harder the longer they build, make sure you like the video and subscribe. Because this one isn't just about revenge. It's about survival. Beginning. I don't remember a time in my childhood when I felt normal. Not even a little. My earliest memories aren't birthday parties or cartoons or family dinners. They're quiet observations, watching people, studying them, trying to figure out why everyone else seemed to understand something that I didn't, or maybe something I understood too well. The house that never felt like home. The house I grew up in always felt cold. Not physically, emotionally. It was the kind of place where the air felt heavy, like every word you spoke had to be measured, weighed, judged. I was adopted when I was young. And for a while, I thought that meant I was chosen, special, wanted. But kids are observant. Even autistic kids, especially autistic kids, we notice patterns. And the pattern I noticed was that I was treated differently. Not in a loving way. Not in a "you're unique" way. But in a "what is wrong with you" kind of way. The diagnosis that became a weapon. I was diagnosed with autism at a young age. I didn't fully understand what it meant at the time. But I quickly learned what it meant to them. It meant I was difficult. It meant I was weird. It meant I didn't behave the way I was supposed to. And in that house, anything that didn't fit got punished. Daily life, walking on glass. Every day felt like walking on broken glass. Say the wrong thing? Punishment. Speak too formally? Punishment. Ask too many questions? Punishment. Don't make enough eye contact? Punishment. Make too much eye contact? Punishment. There was no winning, just surviving. I started learning how to shrink myself, make myself smaller, quieter, less noticeable. But even that didn't work, because the problem wasn't what I did. The problem was that I existed in a way they didn't understand. The "you think you're better" moment. When I was 13, something changed. I was given a series of tests. Long ones. The kind where adults watch you closely, take notes, whisper to each other when they think you're not paying attention. A few weeks later, I was placed into special college-level courses. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even tell anyone at first. Because deep down, I already knew how it would be received. And I was right. That night, I remember standing in the kitchen, the smell of something burnt in the oven, the sound of a clock ticking louder than it should, and my mom standing across from me, holding the paper, reading it, over and over again. Her face didn't look proud. It didn't look surprised. It looked angry. "You think you're better than everyone now?" The words hit harder than anything physical. Because I hadn't said that. I hadn't thought that. But in her mind, that's what intelligence meant. Arrogance. Superiority. Disrespect. "I didn't say that," I whispered. "Wrong move." Her expression hardened instantly. "Oh, so now you're talking back?" And just like that, the paper didn't matter anymore. The achievement didn't matter. Only the punishment did. The breaking point. That night didn't just hurt physically. It broke something inside me. Something quiet. Something important. The part of me that believed, if I just tried hard enough, if I just behaved correctly, if I just proved myself, things would get better. That night, I realized something terrifying. Nothing I did would ever be enough. So I stopped trying. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, piece by piece, I started disconnecting, running away. At 14, I left. No dramatic goodbye. No note. No plan. Just gone. I remember the feeling more than the details. The cold air hitting my face. The sound of my own footsteps. The strange mix of fear and freedom sitting in my chest. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. But freedom doesn't last long when you're 14 and alone. Reality catches up. It always does. Caught. By 16, they found me. I wasn't surprised. Part of me had been expecting it the entire time. The system doesn't forget kids like me. That's how I ended up in a group home. The group home. The building wasn't what you'd expect. It wasn't some horror movie setting. It looked normal. Too normal. Like it was trying to hide what it really was. Inside there were rules, schedules, structure. But underneath all of that, there was something else. A shared understanding. Every kid there had a story. And none of them were good. There were multiple houses. 2 for boys. 1 for girls. Different buildings. Same pain. Different faces. Same survival instincts. The other kids. You could tell who had been there the longest. They moved differently. Spoke less. Trusted no one. Then there were the new ones. Loud. Defensive. Angry. Still fighting something that had already happened. And me? I observed. Like always. I listened. Watched. Learned the dynamic. Who to avoid. Who to stay near. When to speak. When to stay silent. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the only weird one. And strangely, that made things easier. The school everyone went to. All of us went to the same continuation school. It wasn't a choice. It was just where we were sent. The building itself felt tired. Like it had seen too many stories like ours. The desks were worn. The walls were faded. And the energy, it wasn't hopeful. It was resigned. The first day, I remember that first morning vividly. The sound of chairs scraping. Students talking over each other. Some laughing too loudly. Others completely silent. Teachers trying, barely, to maintain control. And then, the principal walked in. Everything got quiet. Not respectful quiet, but cautious quiet. The kind where everyone's waiting to see what kind of person this is. He stood at the front of the room, looked around, took a deep breath, and then said something that would stick with me, far longer than he probably intended. The line that changed everything. I am here to teach you to speak in complete sentences, and use words that have more than 2 syllables. Silence. Not confusion. Not shock. Just silence. But inside my head, it was loud. Deafening. Because in that one sentence, he didn't just underestimate us. He dismissed us. All of us. Every single kid in that room. He didn't see trauma. He didn't see intelligence buried under survival. He didn't see potential. He saw the stupidity, the internal explosion. I felt it instantly. That familiar heat in my chest. The same one I used to feel at home. The one that said, say something, fight back, correct them. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to tear that statement apart. Explain how intelligence isn't measured by circumstance. How trauma doesn't equal ignorance. How wrong he was. But then, something else crept in. Something quieter, colder, more calculated. I was tired. So unbelievably tired. Tired of explaining myself. Tired of proving myself. Tired of fighting to be seen as something I already was. And that's when the idea formed. Slowly. Clearly. Almost peacefully. The decision. If they already believed I was stupid. If they had already made up their minds. If nothing I said would change it. Then why fight it? Why not give them exactly what they expect? Why not become the dumbest person they've ever met? And that thought, that single thought, sat in my mind, growing, spreading, taking shape. I leaned back in my chair, looked at the principal, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt curious, because I wasn't going to prove him wrong. Not yet. First, I was going to let him believe he was absolutely right. Cliffhanger end, stop point. And the next time I opened my mouth in that classroom, I wasn't going to sound like myself anymore. Not even a little. Because I had just made a decision that would change everything. So I did it. I became exactly what they thought I was. And at first, it worked perfectly. Too perfectly. Because the more I acted like an idiot, the more they needed me to be one. Short CTA. If you've ever been underestimated, hit like right now. Because this part, this is where everything starts to spiral. The next time I spoke in class, I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I had to decide how stupid I wanted to sound. The first act, the teacher had just asked a simple question. What is the main idea of the paragraph? Easy. Too easy. I knew the answer instantly. I could have broken it down, analyzed it, expanded it, but instead, I raised my hand slowly, almost awkwardly. The teacher looked surprised. Like, really? You? Go ahead, she said. I opened my mouth and intentionally stumbled over my words. Is it like the thing, the main, sentence? Silence. A few kids snickered. The teacher blinked. No, she said carefully, like she was talking to a child. That's not quite it. And that's when I felt it. That shift. That subtle, invisible shift. Expectation lowered. Adjusting the persona. It didn't take long to refine the act. By the second day, I had patterns. Speech slowed. Vocabulary simplified. Eye contact inconsistent. Questions just slightly off enough to be annoying, but not enough to seem fake. Wait, what does paragraph mean again? Is that like a sentence group thing? Do we have to read all of it? The reactions were immediate. Teachers started sighing more. Students started laughing more. And something strange happened. I became noticeable. Attention in a different way. Before this, I was invisible. Too quiet. Too weird. Too hard to understand. Now, I was entertainment. The boys in particular found it hilarious. Not in a cruel way, not always, but in that immature, chaotic way teenagers do. Yo, you serious right now? You really don't get this? I just shrug, smile slightly, tilt my head like I was confused. And inside, I was watching everything, recording everything. The ease of being less. The weirdest part? It was easier. So much easier. There was no pressure to perform. No expectation to excel. No one watching me like I was something to fix, or something to break. For the first time, failure wasn't punished. It was expected. And somehow, that felt like freedom. Weeks passed. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into a full quarter. And the act? It became second nature. Teachers stopped calling on me for real answers. Students stopped expecting anything from me. Even staff at the group home started treating me differently. Simpler instructions, more patience, less intensity. It was like I had stepped into a completely different identity, and no one questioned it. Not once. First strange moment. It happened during math class. We were doing basic equations, something ridiculously simple. The teacher walked over, looked at my paper, and frowned. "You didn't even try." I blinked, then gave a soft, confused smile. "I didn't get it." She stared at me longer than usual, long enough to feel uncomfortable. "You've been here for weeks," she said slowly. "You're telling me you still don't understand this?" I shrugged again. Same act, same tone. But this time, she didn't sigh. She didn't move on. She wrote something down, and that was new. Second strange event. A few days later, I was called out of class. Not unusual, but the way it happened was, a staff member showed up at the door. Didn't say my name loudly, just gestured. "Come with me." The hallway felt quieter than usual, like something was off. "Am I in trouble?" I asked, keeping the same tone. "No," they said quickly. Too quickly. That's when I noticed. They weren't looking at me directly. We walked into a small office. There was a chair, a desk, and a folder. Always the folders. "Just answer a few questions," they said. The questions were simple at first. Basic comprehension. Simple logic. And I answered wrong. Every time. On purpose. But this time, something felt different. They weren't frustrated. They weren't annoyed. They were observing. Being watched differently. The way they looked at me wasn't the same as before. Before it was dismissive. Now, it was analytical. Like I wasn't just a student anymore. I was a case. Third event, the shift begins. Back in class. Things started changing. Subtly, but noticeably. Teachers began checking my work more often, asking more questions, watching my reactions. One even crouched beside my desk and said, "Are you sure you understand what's going on?" I nodded slowly. "No." She didn't smile, didn't move, just studied me. And for the first time since I started this, I felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not yet. But awareness. The calls start. At the group home, staff started pulling me aside. "How are you feeling lately? Do you feel confused often? Do you have trouble understanding people?" I gave them exactly what they expected. Soft answers. Uncertain tone. "I don't know. Sometimes. I think so." And every answer seemed to confirm something. Pieces connecting, but not fully. I could feel it building. Something behind the scenes. Something I wasn't fully seeing yet. Files being updated. Notes being shared. Conversations happening without me. But I didn't stop. Because at this point, I was in control. Right? This was my choice. My act. My game. And they were all just reacting to it. False confidence. There was a moment, late at night, lying in bed at the group home, staring at the ceiling, where I actually smiled. Because I thought, I did it. I beat them at their own system. They underestimated me, and I turned it into control. I wasn't the defective one anymore. They were the ones being fooled. But then, a week later, everything changed. I was called into the office again. But this time, there were more people. Not just a staff member. Not just a teacher. A man I had never seen before. Sitting quietly. Watching me. No introduction. No explanation. Just presence. "Have a seat," someone said. I sat down. Kept the act. loose posture, unfocused gaze. But inside, something tightened, because this felt different. Not like discipline, not like school. Something else. The first crack. The man leaned forward slightly, folded his hands, and spoke calmly. "I'd like to ask you a few questions." I nodded slowly. "Okay." And in that moment, something clicked. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. This wasn't about school anymore. This wasn't about being dumb. This was something deeper, something official, something serious. And for the first time since this all started, I felt it. Not control, not amusement, but a quiet, creeping realization that maybe, just maybe, I had taken this too far. Ending, realization moment. I looked around the room, at the papers, at the faces, at the way they were all watching me now. Not like a student, not like a problem, but like something they needed to figure out before it got worse. And that's when it hit me. They didn't think I was stupid anymore. They thought something was wrong with me. Something serious. Something that needed to be diagnosed. And as I sat there, still pretending, still playing the role I created, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't controlling the situation anymore. The situation was controlling me. They thought I was broken. Then they thought I was stupid. Then they thought I was dangerous. But the truth? The truth was something they never even considered. Because the entire time, I was the only one in the room who knew exactly what was happening. Continues, from realization. The room felt smaller. Not physically, but mentally. Like the walls had moved closer, inch by inch, without anyone noticing. I sat there, still in character. Shoulders slightly slouched. Eyes just unfocused enough to seem disconnected. Mouth slightly open, like I was waiting for someone else to explain the world to me. But inside, everything had sharpened. Every detail, every movement, every expression. The man across from me wasn't just observing. He was measuring. The questions change. "Can you tell me what day it is?" Simple. Too simple. I tilted my head slightly. Tuesday. It wasn't Tuesday. He didn't correct me. Didn't react. Just wrote something down. Next question. "Do you know why you're here?" Pause. Calculated. I let my eyes drift to the corner of the room. Shrugged slightly. "No." Another note. The questions kept coming. Patterns. Memory. Logic. Emotions. And every single time, I answered just slightly wrong. Not enough to seem fake, but enough to confirm the version of me they believed in. Connecting the dots. Slow realization. As the session went on, I started noticing something. They weren't testing intelligence anymore. They were testing function. How I processed things. How I reacted. How I interpreted reality. And suddenly, everything clicked into place. The note, the observations, the increased attention, the quiet conversations behind closed doors. They hadn't just accepted my act. They had built a profile around it. And now, they were trying to define it, diagnose it, label it. That's when the first real crack hit me. Not in my act, in my confidence. The reveal begins, but not to them, to me. This wasn't a game anymore. This wasn't me controlling perception. This was them constructing a reality, where I wasn't just slow or confused. I was mentally unstable. And the scariest part? They had evidence, weeks of it. My own behavior, my own words, my own performance. I had built the case against myself. The breaking point, internal panic. For the first time, My mind didn't feel calm. It felt crowded. Thoughts overlapping. Calculations happening too fast. Scenarios branching out in every direction. What if they institutionalize me? What if this follows me forever? What if I can't undo this? But on the outside, I blinked slowly, shifted in my seat, looked confused, still playing the role, because stopping suddenly would be worse. The final test. All right, the man said gently. We're going to do one last thing. He slid a paper across the table. I looked down, and immediately knew what it was. A cognitive assessment. A real one. Not the simplified nonsense I'd been faking through. This one required actual thinking, patterns, recognition, speed. And suddenly, I had a choice. The decision that changes everything. Keep the act going, and fully commit to the consequences. Or break character, and destroy the illusion I had built so carefully. But if I broke it, how would I explain the last few months? How would I justify pretending? Manipulating? I wasn't just a misunderstood kid anymore. I would look deceptive, unstable in a completely different way. So I did the only thing I thought I could do. I hesitated, and then I leaned into the role. Full reveal of the revenge plan. Because that's what this had been. Even if I hadn't called it that at the start. It was revenge. Not loud. Not violent. Not obvious. But precise. They treated me like I was less. So I became less. They expected ignorance. So I performed it. They dismissed intelligence. So I hid it. And in doing so, I forced them to reveal something about themselves. Their assumptions. Their biases. Their willingness to define someone without knowing them. I held up a mirror, and they believed the reflection. But I never thought they would take it this far. Chaos intensifies. The next few days were a blur. More meetings, more evaluations, more questions. Staff at the group home started watching me constantly. Did you take your medication? I'm not on any medication. Oh, okay, just checking. Phone calls behind closed doors. My name mentioned in hushed tones. Teachers treating me differently again. Not annoyed. Not dismissive. Concerned. And concern was so much more dangerous. The explosion. Then came the call. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I heard about it afterward. The psychologist had submitted his report, and it didn't say low intelligence. It said something else, something that shifted everything. The truth comes out. I was called back in. Same room, same man, but this time, his tone was different. Something isn't adding up, he said. And for the first time, I felt seen, not as the character I created, but as me. He leaned forward slightly, studied my face. You're inconsistent. Silence. Your responses don't match your capabilities. My heart started pounding, not from fear, from recognition. He saw it. He saw through it. And just like that, the act cracked, not outwardly, not dramatically, but internally, because I realized something I hadn't considered before. I wasn't the only one observing. He had been watching too, analyzing, connecting patterns, just like me. Twist, respect for the enemy. In that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt something unexpected, respect, because he didn't react emotionally. Didn't jump to conclusions, didn't label me immediately. He waited, watched, collected data, and then, he challenged the narrative, the same way I had. The final truth. More tests followed, real ones, and this time, I didn't fake it. I answered naturally, quickly, accurately, and the result? An IQ of 152. The room went quiet. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just still. Because everything they thought they knew collapsed in that moment. Emotional breakdown. But here's the part no one talks about. Winning didn't feel good. Not the way I expected. Because I wasn't just proving them wrong. I was confronting everything that led me here. The abuse, the labels, the constant need to prove my worth. And suddenly, I wasn't the calm observer anymore. I was just tired. Exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Acceptance. Eventually, things settled. The diagnosis changed. More accurate. More understanding. I was transferred. Given a chance. And for the first time, I didn't have to pretend. Not to be smarter. Not to be smaller. Just to be. Silence returns. The chaos faded. No more constant observations. No more whispered conversations. No more performances. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I started rebuilding something I didn't even realize I had lost. Trust. In myself. Final reflection. Deep plus powerful. Here's the truth. People will label you. Quickly. Confidently. Sometimes permanently. Not because they understand you, but because it's easier than trying. And you have two choices. Fight every label, every assumption, every misunderstanding, or let them believe it, and prove them wrong, when it actually matters. But be careful, because sometimes, the roles we play to survive can become cages we didn't mean to build. Ending. I walked away from that experience with something more valuable than revenge. Clarity. About people. About systems. About myself. And one lesson I'll never forget. Never underestimate someone just because they stopped trying to prove you wrong. Because one day, they might decide to stop pretending. Final CTA. If this story hit you, if you've ever been misunderstood, misjudged, or underestimated, drop a comment. I read them all. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real, powerful stories like this. Because sometimes, the quietest people have the loudest truths.